meeting. I'd like to start by sending Tim Oliver's apologies. He's unable to join us today as he is in an ILACS inspection report out. But I'd like to welcome everyone to the room. There are some new faces around the table, but if you can introduce yourselves as you speak, that would be really, really helpful. So if we can move on to the first slide, please.
Sorry to interrupt if you're speaking. We can't hear anything online if you have started.
One, two, two, two.
Just heard something. Yeah.
Hello, 1, 2. Can you hear?
Yeah, got you. Yeah, thank you.
I did turn the gain up a little bit there. I think it was that one.
We should turn the gain up even more, just so we.
1, 2. Can you hear clearly now?
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Yes, apologies. Thank you. Third time lucky. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's Farnham board. I'd like to start by giving Tim Oliver's apologies. He's unable to attend today because he is in an ILACS meeting. So I'd like to welcome you all here. And Hannah, if we could move to the first slide, please. So obviously this is the agenda. We do have some new faces in the room today, but if I could ask people to introduce themselves as they speak, that would be really helpful. Otherwise, we will just move on. So if you can go to the next slide. So in terms of actions, Elaine, do you want to talk us through these?
Elaine Martin, Programme Manager. Yes, so the first one was to raise the A31 tree reinstatement with Crest Nicholson. This action's closed as a meeting with the Transport Development Planning team confirmed that Crest are aware of this issue. The second one, FIP to arrange a heritage site meeting. This is closed. We did meet with some various parties on the 25th of March, and some actions were taken from that meeting. I don't know if you want any more detail on that.
Do you want to just give us a quick rundown on what the follow-up actions are, please, Elaine?
Yes, so it was to review the loading bay and the 2-hour resident parking on the west side of Castle Street. To review the E-shaped rain garden at the southeast end of Castle Street as well, and to review whether it could be reduced in size or subject to kind of drainage requirements, etc. And to look at the ironstone immediately south of the E-shaped rain garden. Councillor Hess offered to look into how much ironstone is actually outstanding. So there's a few actions for us there. Thank you.
Perfect, thanks. Do you want to run through the others or?
Yep, so the next one was Surrey Comms to review the options for information formats on the web pages and videos, etc. This is underway as videos and maps are in production as part of a behaviour change campaign and will be considered for the later phases and for road layout changes. The next one, Surrey Comms to consider a separate web page for the scheme. This is closed as the project unfortunately does not meet the web team criteria for a separate site, as a separate site would not appear so highly in search engines. And then the last one was to obtain an update on the HGV enforcement. This is closed because we did look into this, and in January and February there were 28 warning notices, 21 penalty charge notices issued by the camera car. But it must be noted that there can be a delay of up to 28 days between a contravention being recorded by the camera car and a PCN or warning letter being sent. So the figure actually might be quite higher. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. And I did get an update from the Cabinet member to advise that a fixed camera had been ordered and would be installed by the end of June. It's the date that I have. So I think everyone is very grateful for the work that's been done by the team to ensure that happens, and that will go in on the Odeon Road. So that will help with both the Castle Street and also the Upper Hale enforcement. So thank you. Do you want to move on to the next slide, please? Elaine?
So as usual, I'd like this slide to remind everybody how, how many things we've actually done since, FIP kind of got implemented. So there's been a great deal of work and a great deal completed already. Later on, we'll talk about it, the actual programme in more detail, and the overview of progress paper, which is attached to this meeting, we'll be giving the highlights as well in a little bit more detail. But the team will talk through on the following slides.
Hannah, do you want to talk through this one? Hannah, you're on mute.
Sorry, trying to share my screen and get off mute and everything at the same time. Yes, happy to talk through this one. So I'm pleased to announce that the shared use path on Riverside Walk is now open. Our contractor has finished the surfacing last week, and works are largely complete. We do have some minor things to finish off, so we've got the new lighting to go in, for example, but we expect all these minor bits to be finished by the end of April, and they don't require the path to be closed to complete those. So that's the section shown in red between Riverside car park and Brightwell's Yard. Just got some before and afters on the screen to show you how much how much an improvement we've achieved here, which is great. I've also been speaking with Farnham Town Council to see what we can do in terms of a sort of official opening ceremony and trying to link that up with a town centre event to promote the new path and the active travel opportunities that we've now got from Riverside car parks to the town centre. So more to come on that. And then the only other thing to add is that we've got, well, not us, Crest Nicholson have got their works underway to remove the construction bridge associated with Brightwell's Yard, which means the access from South Street is closed at the moment. We are trying to schedule a meeting with Crest to get an update on when they will be tying the new bridge into the footpath. But at the moment, I don't have a date for that. So the Borelli Walk work, so the bit shown in blue on the map, would follow that bridge replacement. But as I said, I don't have a date yet on that, and we'll provide an update as soon as I can. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. And if I could just ask that the Surrey and Waverley councillors were also kept in the loop with your discussions with Farnham about opening, if that's at all possible.
Yeah,
And if
of
we
course.
can try and get some comms out before Easter, I think that would be worthwhile because a lot of families tend to come in over Easter. So I think some kind of messaging would be helpful if you could do that for us, Ben. Do you want to move on to the next slide? I think that's you, Elaine.
So unfortunately, Neil McClure, who's managing the LC WIPs, local cycling, walking, improved infrastructure plan, isn't here to talk, but I will be kind of running through what he told me to say. So stage one of the Farnham LC WIP report is complete. However, there are some outstanding items, which is the alignment of the section of a route in Farnham Park, which is being discussed currently and will be provided in an addendum to the report. However, this won't impact the start of the stage two feasibility design of the priority routes for Farnham and Waverley Borough local walking and cycling infrastructure plan. And members will be engaged during this process, and public consultation will happen on the schemes and options, etc., and it will be taking place as well. So that's all I have on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Okay, so can we move on to the next slide, please?
Okay, so Oripo, I'm the lead on the town center project. So on screen is a current construction plan for 2025-26. Iteration of the construction plan is regularly shared with key stakeholders, with information for 2025, more specifically also on the project website, but quite high level still for 2026. And we'll add further details as the project progresses on the project website. As mentioned on a number of occasions, it's very much subject to change. And every time a change is confirmed, we'll share that with stakeholders on the project website. Main change on this one since the last time is that phase 5 is now aligned with summer holidays, which was always intended, but as we're moving the phasing around, we kind of like misalign it at some point, and we can like run that by the school as well. Next slide, Hannah, please. Thanks. So we're now on site, obviously. Phase 2, as everyone knows, is now complete. The island at the top of Downing Street have been removed, and we've got temporary traffic signals. And the section of the borough between Downing Street and Castle Street is now operating as a two-way, with vehicles turning right out of Castle Street. We've moved on to phase 3, which is ongoing, and will be there till late May. And it's just mainly pavements and curb realignment work. Once we're done with phase 3, we'll move on with phase 4, which is Downing Street, Longbridge Junction, which will install signals at this junction. And it will be only after completion of phase 4 that phase 3 will be made two-way, so not for quite a while. Next slide, Hannah, please. Thanks. Okay, so what we're hearing and experiencing with the team on site and the first feedback we're getting, sorry, that traffic has much improved since the two-way was first implemented. However, we are fully aware that it remains variable through the day, and we acknowledge that there can be queuing on Downing Street and Longbridge, especially during peak hours and at weekends, during the weekend. So we're keeping a close eye on it, and we've already implemented a number of measures and looking at additional ones to help with it, including so traffic light in the very early days of the two-way implementation. We did some tweaking to the permanent traffic lights at South Street, the Borough Junction, and as well some calibrating of the temporary traffic light at the top of Downing Street. Deliveries was reported to create issues and blocking traffic, and we've got the enforcement team to commit for the foreseeable future to drop by more regularly. The site team's been moving vehicle causing an issue along, and our clerk of work and its ring-away counterparts also dropping regularly into shop to make sure that delivery need is addressed, and they are aware to talk to their deliveries, not to block the traffic. And businesses have reported to be adjusting their delivery times to early morning prior to rush hour. So hopefully all this combined help. We also now have funding secure for 3 portable verbal messaging signs, and they're now installed. You may have seen them as you were, if you drove here, yeah. So again, we'll be able to make use of them if there's emergency works to help with traffic. If you don't mind clicking, Hannah, I've got one last point on this slide. Ultimately, really, we're a bit limited with the temporary traffic signal at the top of Longbridge and, at the top of Downing Street, as we can't link them to other signals, and they can't vary depending on the time of day or the weekend. So we want the permanent traffic signal installed at the top of Downing Street, and so we've brought that part of the project forward compared to what it was originally, which would help. Okay. So before I hand over to our communication manager, Ben, I also wanted to address a comm that was done around the implementation of the two-way on the borough. So it was advertised widely that it would be done as part of phase 2. It was discussed with key stakeholders as early as in the autumn. It was part of the Old Town Matter. It was part of the various welcomes letter that were sent to various group of people. We never did advertise a specific date, and the reason why it wasn't advertised is that the implementation that was not known in advance. We were keen to implement it as soon as the works permitted. However, the final bits of works we needed to do were weather dependent, and so the date was only confirmed a day before implementation. And because of the short turnaround, communication was released via social media only. We do very much acknowledge that because of this, the change took a number of key stakeholders by surprise, and they did not feel like they had a chance to prepare for it or were in control. So looking forward to the next two-way change later in the year, so that won't be until late summer, early autumn. For the bottom part of Downing Street, we plan to have a short gap between we complete the necessary works for the two-way to become live, and actually make it live. So we've got time to release additional comm and to brief all stakeholders. And I will now hand over to Ben, who's going to go in more detail through the COM strategy.
Yeah, so just to touch on that part about Downing Street. So giving me that sort of fixed date for that road layout change will give me plenty of time to do some proactive comms ahead of the implementation, and would expect that to include sort of signage at the site, which I think is going to be quite an important one, as well as media updates. We can put out a newsletter, and we can do proactive social media to wrap around it, and we'll keep thinking over the coming months about what else we can do on that. Moving on to sort of the main communications. I've put up on the presentation some of the work we've done since the last board to communicate the town centre works. Obviously, the last board was before work's begun. And just to reiterate what I said then, we are going way over and above anything that I've ever known on a road scheme since I've worked at Surrey County Council. Since the last board, we've written to all addresses in the town. Our newsletter, e-newsletter subscribers keeps growing. It's got an excellent open rate. Both issues so far have been opened by more than 80% of subscribers, which is, it's really good when, and that particularly happens when people have signed up for them proactively, they do read. We've also reached thousands of people with social media. We've appeared across Surrey's local media as well. So there's been a lot going on. We're not standing still. There's a lot still to be done. We've started meeting with businesses regularly. The static signs around the boards and around the town are being updated. Those variable messaging signs are out now. Now I've seen them. I think we could probably tweak some of it a bit. So we'll look at that over the coming days. As already been mentioned, we're preparing for the start of our behaviour change work. We are always listening, we're always reflecting, and we're always looking about how we can make improvements. As a result of feedback that I've had, where I was told the website was too wordy, it was hard to read. So I went to the web team, I've got for advice. And as a result, this website, I've started streamlining that content, and we're starting to spotlight that key information. That started with the homepage, that is now live, so that's happened. And over the coming weeks, I'll continue reviewing the content. And I was told only yesterday, but we've got there, that we can have some maps on the website embedded, so they're not downloaded. That was one of my problems there, that I thought they wouldn't necessarily be as effective, but we can have maps on the website, and we're going to get some up there to show the gyratory change. We'll get a few done to show how it was, how it is, and how it will be. This is work that I'll be prioritising. I'm also exploring other ways to embed maps on the website, which will be useful for later in the project. So we'll keep you posted as that develops. Moving on to the next slide. So this is kind of what is coming up. So we're building a conversation in a system called Hello Lamppost that we've been trialing within the comms service over the past year or so. It's a chatbot that uses AI, and it's you can access it through a link or a QR code. And it's a good way of reaching new audiences, and they can ask the latest updates on the works and what's going on. But we're also working with the town council to see if there's a way that we can promote events in the town and town centre events as part of that, which I think is hopefully a positive way of putting everything together. We're looking to spend the spring and the summer encouraging people to walk into town or to park and stride from the car parks that don't use the gyratory. But this is also a point where we can include nuanced messaging about through traffic. It's quite a complicated one, and what I don't want to do is give anyone any impression that they shouldn't be coming to Farnham at this point. But we also want people to come to Farnham, but without adding pressure onto the roads if we can. So we're producing maps and videos. So we're ready to get going after Easter. That's kind of a good time to start encouraging people to change their behaviour when it's a bit warmer, it's a bit lighter, and hopefully a bit less damp. And you might remember at the last board, we had some students from UCA. While I got talking to them, I ended up in touch with the head of graphic design. And they're going to do some, they like working on live projects. So they're going to come up with some ideas about how they can encourage people in Farnham to travel differently. One of my hopes is that we'll be able to reach younger groups in a way that feels relevant and authentic to them. So we'll see what comes out of that, and that hopefully that'll be quite interesting and quite exciting. I welcome, had an email from Councillor Powell this week, and I welcome how steps are being taken locally to encourage local people to support their town. I think people are very receptive to those community-led channels, and I'm happy to explore how we can work together to support this from the project side. Finally, we know how important it is that people continue to come into town and support that local economy. We know the bid is preparing some work in this area, and we remain committed to helping with this and amplifying their messages as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Just a couple of things before I open it up to other questions. Elaine, David and I did a site walk this morning. We went round all of the different bits of roadworks and we took some notes as to things that we need to do some follow-up on. And there was an agreement that there would be a further safety audit that would be undertaken. It would look at things like the white line marking, an additional look right, look left as you come out of the central car park onto the borough. We talked about the green man phasing at the top of Downing Street, some additional pull-ins on Downing Street. We were on Downing Street when a paramedic tried to come up this morning. Some of that was caused by the way people reacted to the paramedic. You know, there was a van that particularly didn't really react in the way that we would hope people would react when they saw an ambulance behind them. We obviously can't necessarily address that, but one of the things the team are going to do is to look at whether we can put some additional pull-ins in on Downing Street to alleviate that in that situation. They're going to look at the ped crossing at the top of Downing Street and the timing of that, and also to see whether or not we can make them a little bit closer together, and also the ped crossing on Downing Street. So, you know, we've been out, we've walked around. I know the team are doing that. I know Aurelie doing that on a very regular basis, but they have committed to go away and look at that again. And I know Greg was out with people this morning as well. I don't know if you wanted to add anything on that, Greg.
Thank you very much, Greg Stafford, Member of Parliament, Farnham and Borden. Yeah, thank you very much, Catherine. Yeah, similar met businesses this morning, specifically around the kind of Downing Street junction, but also down towards Union Street, down to Firgrove Hill. I think for them, there are a number of points. First of all, the sequencing of the lights, as you've mentioned, Catherine, at the top is a real concern for them. It seemed from a layman's point of view, from my point of view, that the sequencing is wrong. There's far more traffic trying to come out of Downing Street than there is going along the Borough West Street kind of way, and the sequence seems to be favourable in terms of timings to the bit that has less traffic. Now, that may be just a perception point, but I think given this a temporary traffic light and presumably only requires you to press a few buttons to change the sequencing, I would suggest that changing the sequencing and seeing what happens, even if it's for half a week, would seem like something that you should do immediately going forward, because to be frank, it can't be any worse at rush hour times. I think you've talked again about pull-ins. There was a view from the businesses that I spoke to that the planters should probably go, because they're the barrier, the physical barrier that stops cars pulling apart when emergency vehicles are coming through. Obviously, notwithstanding that some people don't know how to react when an emergency vehicle comes up behind them. I think some of the other real key points was that the town, I think there is, because of the quite understandable frustration and negativity around the traffic problems, businesses were very, very concerned with what you touched on in the comms point, that to get the message out that Farnham is still very much open for business, and that, you know, outside those peak hours in the morning and the afternoon, actually the traffic flows relatively well, not perfectly, but relatively well. And actually we should be trying to encourage people to come in. And I know businesses are very, very keen to be part of that conversation to ensure that we can do that. So again, I want to hear a bit more detail about how we're going to, what sort of campaigns can be run to say that Farnham is open. More of the signage, I think, was also a key. And, you know, I say I'd raise this, I thought it was going to fall on deaf ears. I don't know who's here with their Waverley hat on here. And I know parking charges in the car park are about to go up, but businesses thought that one of the very key ways to encourage people into the town was to reduce car parking charges, dare I say, even get rid of them for an hour or 2 hours in the morning. I think that's an excellent idea. Certainly during the time where this work's going on, because again, anything we can do to encourage people to come into the town at the appropriate times is important. And I get the active travel stuff, absolutely. But if you're a person who's disabled or a person who's elderly, and you want to do your weekly shop in the centre of Farnham, which is what we should be wanting them to do rather than going to out-of-town stores, then they're going to need to have that incentive to come in if they're going to sit in the traffic. So I put that there. My one question, sorry, Catherine, at the end is, it was mentioned that the permanent traffic lights at the top of Downing Street were going to come earlier. when earlier are they going to come? And can we ensure that we sort the sequencing of those lights, or the sequencing of the temporary lights, so that when the permanent lights go in, we don't repeat the problems that we're seeing at the moment?
So just on the last question, it'd be in 2025, the winter, spring for those traffic lights. So as mentioned, we are able to do much more adjustment. We'll be able to link them to the South Street, the Borough Junction, and the Downing Street. So also like we can link together. There will be a period of calibration, but that can be done quite quickly, and we can adjust them quite quickly, which we don't have the ability to do at the moment with the temporary ones.
I think the question Greg's asking was the same question I was going to ask. If you've moved it forwards in terms of putting the permanent lights at the top of Downing Street and obviously the permanent lights on the Longbridge Downing Street junction that we're also working on, the question I think he's asking is it possible to do that before the Christmas period essentially, or is it going to be after that, just so that we have some idea of where that's likely to land?
So the permanent light now is winter to spring 2026, I meant. Sorry, my mistake, 2026.
Sorry, I'm being confused about the terminology. When you say winter, spring 2026, do you mean, are we talking November 2025 to February 2026? Just so I'm really clear what the timing is.
Spring 2026, so late winter, spring 2026.
Greg, just to make you feel comfortable, we're going to meet with the site team later. We're going to run through your concerns and we'll see what we can do. Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. Just on the comms piece, Ben, before I open up. So obviously we very much appreciate the work you're doing, and we very much appreciate that, you know, Surrey doesn't necessarily do this level of comms around these sorts of projects. However, there is also still a gap, and it's quite a significant gap. And as you know, myself and other councillors are now committed to working with businesses, with Gemma, wherever she is, right behind me, as the chair of the bid. Essentially what we've committed to is that we will do a weekly update of what's going on in terms of events, just something simple, but also a weekly update on, progress on the project, just so we can share some photographs from the project each week so we can track what's going on. And the three councillors between us will commit to having a monthly drop-in for businesses so that we can collate the concerns that they have and share them formally with the team. Obviously, that's in addition to the meetings you're already organising, but that's just so that there is a local member-led thing. Obviously, anything that goes on needs to be addressed by yourselves, but I do think that it's important from the comms that we've had from the businesses that we are more visible to them. We obviously also live in the town, and therefore, we're more affected by what's going on than officers who are necessarily remote because they're working in different parts of Surrey. But I think, Ben, if we can work together on how we do that, I think that would be really, really helpful. Would that be something you'd be happy to commit to?
Well, I think we need to have a bit more of a chat offline, but yeah, in the principle of that, absolutely. I think we need to make sure we're doing is there's us as the project team. We've got like the economic team in Waverley. We've got the bids. There's the work that you're doing. If we really want to supercharge what we're doing, we need to make sure we're working together in partnership and speaking together and supporting each other and sharing messages and doing all we can together to get it all out. It's the sum of many parts, I think, this one, and I think the more we can do together, I think is a positive to try and make sure that all those gaps are filled, and we're happy to explore that with you and find out what we can do.
Thanks, Ben. Anyone else got questions? David?
Just a number of comments so far. First of all, the heritage plan, which you say is closed, but it's not really closed, is it? Because, I mean, we've still got the outcome of the reviews to take place, so I assume that will be coming back to the future meetings, yes? That's the first point I'd like to make. Secondly, good news about having a fixed camera Yes, but I assume that will take the place of the camera car that will disappear, is that correct? Third is the point on Downing Street. Of all the retailers, I think retailers on Downing Street have felt the pain, if you want to call it that, the most. And it's encouraging to see that you're moving the traffic lights, forward on that, the permanent traffic lights forward. If we could remove it even more forward, I think that'd be helpful. And in the meantime, is it really necessary to retain the pedestrian crossing lights in the position that they are? And fourthly, I'm pleased to say that as Doubting Thomas on the right turn on from Castle Street to the Borough have obviously been proved wrong. So in fact, we were concerned about that, but it seems to be working perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Ollie, do you want to?
So I'll just take the town center one on Downing Street. So this has been raised a few times. The initial feedback we got from the relevant team is that it needed to remain for safety reason. However, we're going to do, as Catherine mentioned earlier, a full safety audit of everything to do with the phase 2 temporary traffic arrangement because it's staying in place for so long. So we are doing a full safety review and challenging that. I haven't got the outcome yet.
Thank you, Ollie. Anyone else want to? I don't mind, you choose.
I was just say that I'm glad that you're addressing the negative social media, that the perception that Farnham wasn't doing very well with traffic. And I'm encouraged that you'll be working with the local businesses more and residents. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely happy to do that. I said we need to make sure we're putting together and working together. What I meant to say before as well was you'll see from the latest signage, we're very much trying to put out open for business messages and things like that, just to make sure that that's at the heart of what we do, and that's on the BMS as well. So we'll keep plugging away at that and refining those messages over the coming months.
Can I reply on that? Businesses in the town were very appreciative of those new mobile signs. They went down very well, and we look forward to that you'll be able to change the messages on them as the FIP progresses. Thank you.
Thank you, Michaela. Tony?
It's a habit to turn off when you're not looking, so somebody can keep an eye. Actually, a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to everyone involved, because everyone has been extraordinarily flexible during the process. Well, a project like this is never, ever going to go smoothly. And I would like to place on record my personal thanks as a Farnham Town Councillor and as a resident of Farnham, that you've all responded and reacted well to things that have gone wrong, shall we say, but thank you for that. Moving on to everyone's favourite issue, car parking. A couple of things to note. First of all, that Waverley, here I am speaking as a Waverley councillor. Waverley is investing in new machines. One of the great things about these new machines is that, touch wood, they will help solve some of the problems that everybody knows we have across Waverley, but certainly in Farnham, which is where we are in terms of mobile coverage. So whereas currently machines, even the ones that we have that can take card payments, don't always allow them because they can't pick up a signal, these new machines will hopefully solve that problem. And indeed, we are having now more machines that will take card payments, so residents will no longer be reliant upon having to use Ringo. And those of you who don't use Ringo regularly may or may not be aware that actually every time you use it, it costs a minimum of 10p. So if you are going to a car park for an hour, let's say, then you will be paying, and you use Ringo, you will be paying a minimum of 10p. You might actually be paying up to 30p if you don't turn off the messaging. So that's one way that our investment will be helping local residents. The other investment obviously is an ongoing investment, and the team here will be more than aware of that in your role as repairing potholes. We too suffer from potholes in our car parks, and we are committed to obviously repairing those. And what we have to do there is recognise that that too has an impact on businesses. So our programme of both the machine installation and the pothole repairs has to be done and will be done with one eye on making sure it doesn't affect Farnham businesses. So yes, one of the things that I'm aware of is that we need to be communicating all of this as well, and indeed we will be doing so. So thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Just one thing that hasn't come up that I just wanted to raise is that a number of businesses, residents have raised concerns around air quality and also around footfall. And I guess just wanted to reassure you that as a group of councillors, we are working with the Waverley officers that track that data. And actually, so far, there is no evidence that the air quality has deteriorated. The February data will be issued formally in, relatively soon, but so far it actually doesn't look like it's having the impact that people feel it's having. And also in terms of footfall, actually the data for the town doesn't appear to be any different from any of the other towns in Waverley. Sorry, Tony.
Sorry, I'll add one further thing, if I may, Catherine, which is that we're seeing currently, we can't see a particular impact on car park usage, both in terms of people using it and the amount of time they're spending there.
And assuming that you're not tracking what's going on in Brightwells, because Brightwells is currently being run still by Surrey, yes?
Correct, we have no influence there.
Yes, just on the car parking, I repeat my plea for free parking during the time. But it'd be useful, I think, to see that data. So perhaps at the next meeting we could see that car parking data. Obviously the bits that you control. And if Surrey can provide Surrey data, that would be great as well. On the pollution, certainly this morning, businesses in Downing Street definitely felt that there was a pollution. I bow to those who have businesses on Downing Street as well to inform me whether that was wrong or not. It would be useful again if the data is showing that there is no demonstrable impact on that, again, that we could share that with people for reassurance, if nothing else. In terms of the footfall element of it, I understand what you're saying in terms of you haven't noticed any change in footfall. Clearly, the businesses that were speaking to me this morning say that they have reduced customers. I don't think they'd be saying that unless it was actually true for them. So I think it's very easy to hide, but look at overall data and say there's no problem. There may be specific problems in specific places. So I urge whoever's in charge of this to really look, I think, specifically in the sort of Downing Street area, because I think that is, certainly from their point of view, there is a reduction in footfall and business. So perhaps more localized data would be helpful as well.
Carla, as a business owner, do you want to?
I don't think the footfall is due to the FIP. I'm going to put my head on the block here. I think it's more to economic situation at the moment. We have seen a slight, people don't have the cash as they used to have since July, and especially since the October budget. And I think every business is feeling that throughout the country, and I don't think we're any different from any other town. Thank you.
Just 1 second. So we will commit for sure to working with the bid team and with local businesses to better understand what's going on, because we understand it's important. And I think if we can, for the next meeting, ask Waverley to provide some footfall data based on what they have and some car parking data. And also we can look, I know the bid team also pay for footfall data, so we can gather that information as well. But there was a downturn before the work had even started. So I think that's also quite problematic. Yes, actually Greg was first.
Just very briefly, I mean, Michaela, I entirely agree with you, and it's not just Farnham, certainly across the whole of the constituency. There is a downturn. We know the national economic situation that we find ourselves in after the last couple of budgets. Therefore, I would say it is even more incumbent on us, those of us who have any levers to pull within this town, to do everything we can to ensure that nothing that we do adds to the burden the business has at the moment. So I suppose my plea is, yes, the economic situation is dreadful across the area, across the country. but let's make sure that whatever we're doing here tries to help them rather than hinder them, weather that.
Tony?
Thank you. In answer to your request, Catherine, absolutely, we can provide Waverley can provide the updated car park information. That's no problem at all. With respect to footfall, which yes, Waverley does get, my understanding, he looks at Gemma, is your footfall data is far better. Sorry, Gemma being representative of Farnham Bid. My understanding is Farnham Bid has access to even better, by which I mean more detailed footfall analysis, and I think they'd be more helpful to this. I just wanted to go back on something that I didn't say earlier about car park charges. One of the things that we learnt coming up to the end of this year, but one of the things we learnt when we introduced evening charges in our car parks is that communication is very key. And I don't just mean telling people you're doing it, I mean explaining how it works. And we put our hands up in the air, this is Waverley, we put our hands up in the air and say that actually when we introduced what we thought was the right idea, a flat £2 charge, it wasn't the right idea. It actually caused more confusion than it's, and here I would say the same about looking into fine-tuning, for want of a better phrase, car park charges at different times. The probability is it's going to do two things. First of all, it will confuse people of, well, what time is it and where do I go and what have you. But the other thing actually is it potentially may cause, and here I'm looking at the Orally and Elaine, potentially it may cause more problems than it solves, in that you may get surges at particular times, which then leads to the very issues that you're trying to solve, Downing Street and what have you. So I think we have to be very careful about that. And if I will speak to the team about what we may or may not be able to do from a communication point of view, but I very much doubt as a strategy it would be possible. Thank you.
Can't see any more hands. Okay. Oh, sorry, Andy. So sorry.
Thanks, Michaela. No, I wanted to bring up one or two issues to do with Park Row. So to say first of all, I'm Andy McLeod, Surrey Council for Farnham Central and Waverley Council for Moor Park. I wanted to mention a couple of issues to do with Park Row that came up at a meeting which I think you initiated, Catherine, 2 or 3 weeks ago. For people who don't know, people probably mainly do know, Park Row is a very short road off Castle Street between the Nelson Arms and the Arms Houses. And it was initially a two-way road until the COVID period, when it was agreed to make it a one-way road coming towards Castle Street. The issues that we currently have with Park Row is, firstly, there's drainage issues, and there's some block paving type things in the road that run from halfway into the pavement for about 20 yards roughly into Park Row. And prior to that, it's tarmacked, and after that area, it's tarmacked again. And Stuart Copping, who's a local drainage expert, he's recommended that these block things are taken out and the whole area should be paved. And that would solve the draining problems, which are causing potential problems to the buildings either side. Oh, sorry, tarmac. Yeah, sorry for that. So that's the first issue. And I spoke to the town clerk about this, because when this issue was raised some time ago, the town council were concerned about the look of it being in the conservation area. But the town clerk does agree that this should be changed, actually, because the drainage problems are not acceptable. But he's requested that Jenny gets involved in this, and to see if we can put down nicer road surface than just tarmac. That's the suggestion that Ian Lynch has made. So we will speak to Jenny about that, and I've already spoken to Orally about this. And this road was initially very much part of the FIP scheme, but the idea of making it two-way, the idea of making it entirely a pedestrian cycling area with access for local residents, that's been taken out for the moment. It's been left as one way. So we're going to look at that whole thing again. And I spoke to Orley just before the meeting, and we'll look at that again. The second issue is that large vehicles are actually hitting the Arms houses and potentially Nelson Arms. And again, I spoke to the town clerk about that, and he's got CCTV evidence that the main cause of that is very large vehicles like the Biffa waste collection vehicles and the vehicle delivering to the Teller's Arms are actually reversing into Park Row and hitting the buildings. That's sorry. No, it was a vehicle delivering to the Teller's Arms that caused this problem. It was a Young's vehicle that had been delivering to the Teller's Arms that reversed into, because they wanted to go in the other direction from the direction they were facing in order to change direction. And so there is CCTV evidence. In fact, the town council wrote to the Youngs and wrote to the Biffa people and complained about it, and they made the Arms House people aware so that they can seek compensation. And I think we also ought to speak to the police about this, actually, to see if they can do anything. I don't know if the evidence of CCT is sufficient, but I don't see why people shouldn't be prosecuted for doing this, if that's possible. So I'll speak to the local borough commander and see if the police can do anything. So that's just a general update on what's happening. But Orley has agreed to have a look at the whole thing and see what can be done as part of the FIP. If it can't also be totally solved through the FIP, we'll have to find some funding from elsewhere to deal with it within Surrey. So thanks, Catherine. It's just an update on that.
Thanks, Andy. Ian, I can see you've got your hand up. Did you want to come on that?
Thank you. Yeah, just to clarify, I didn't say that it should be changed. I could see that it's a conservation area issue that was council had previously discussed this through our conservation areas task group, and what I suggest is that matter goes back to the conservation areas task group, because the design of that particular row was to blend within the conservation area, so any change really needs to have that wider consideration. Although we are receiving some of the complaints about the vehicles, as Councillor MacLeod has advised. Just to be clear, we don't hold clear CCTV evidence, but we know the vehicles. We can tell them from the routes they've followed and which vehicles were causing the damage. There have been others that have ignored the left turn up to Castle Street and then gone up the other way round to avoid where there are no signs saying you can't go into Castle Street, because the roads are not suitable for the larger vehicles. So there has been some damage to the Arms houses that way as well. But the recent ones have been by vehicles reversing in the no entry side and turning round.
Thank you, Ian. Just to add one further point of clarity, the blocks that are on the ground of the paving that's there at the moment, according to the drainage guy, in 1970s, so they're not sort of conservation or anything particularly exciting. But the issue is that they've sunk to create sort of two channels, and because they've created two channels, that's where the water ponds, and then when somebody drives through it, it's going up against the listed building. That's what's doing the damage. Anybody got anything else they would like to raise? Okay, Hannah, could you move to the next slide, please? Go for it, Elaine.
Sorry, we've lost you online again.
Not hear us at all, Hannah?
Oh, I can hear you, Catherine.
Okay, it's just Elaine. She's going to do it again.
Thanks.
Lost my flow now. So as you can see, this is split into two parts. There's the FIP element of work, and then there's the wider network. So we've already spoken, Borelli's has almost completed, and the Farnham Town Centre improvement works are fully up and going. So I'm going to pass over to Matt Jezard, who can give us a little bit of background about the other works which may be happening in the area.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you can hear me. I'm having some Zoom issues this morning. When I tried to join the meeting, my new laptop told me that I wasn't allowed to join from the Netherlands. Can assure you I'm not in the Netherlands, so hopefully everything's working okay. I'm going to share a map that, sorry, Matt Jezard, I'm the Traffic and Streetworks Manager at Surrey County Council. I'm going to attend board meetings going forwards because I think it's useful to provide some reassurance about the management of the wider road network around Farnham while the project delivery is ongoing. I'm going to share a map that the Surrey County councillors have already seen in a meeting that I've had with them. Oh, could somebody else stop sharing for a moment to allow me to share, please? That's possible. Thank you. If you can just let me know when you can see that map.
Just coming up now, Matt. It's not there yet. There you go.
Excellent. Okay. I'm not sure what size screen you're able to be seeing that on, so apologies for some of the small font. I will talk through that. If you're able to have a look at that in the meantime, I'll just cover off some sort of higher level matters first. Just wanted to reassure everybody that my teams who carry out the wider coordination of works across all of Surrey are actively working closely with the FIP project team. They meet regularly. We're keeping well sighted on progress of the town centre works in order to be able to make informed decisions around other activities that need to take place on the network. We are trying to keep the surrounding area of Farnham as clear of activities as far as possible, but obviously it's not possible to just prevent other activities going on over a significant period of time. And as across the rest of Surrey, there's a huge demand on road network space, much of it development driven. At a high level, I've met with our Hampshire colleagues just across the boundary, and we already have very good business as usual cross-boundary coordination relationship with them. But we've met with them specifically to ensure they're well sighted on the Farnham project delivery and aware of that extra sensitivity for all things in and around Farnham. So we've now got some enhanced cross-border coordination measures in place there to try and ensure they don't send any traffic Farnham's way without consideration as to what stage the project delivery is at. We've also engaged, along with Orally and the project team, with Surrey colleagues responsible for all the cyclical maintenance activities on the A31 and other areas. And again, that workflow will be determined around project phases to ensure that it doesn't cause any more disruption than might be necessary. We're also engaged with National Highways. We're conscious that M3 closures can have an impact on Farnham, certainly the north of Farnham and the Hale area. So there is a full closure of the M3 for a weekend, 25th to 28th of April, between junctions 3 and 4. And the signed diversion route will be, as it always is, the A30. But we are aware that if that creates particularly northbound queues on the M3, then people can come off at earlier junctions and reroute towards Farnham. So we're in discussions with National Highways as to how we might best mitigate that. So referring to the map, this is only a schematic map, and of course it doesn't cover every activity. This is covering the major activities that we're aware of and are actively trying to mitigate the impacts of. If I go around the map in a clockwise direction, so the top right there, around about sort of 2 o'clock, this is the Miller Homes development on Hale Road. The phase 1's already completed. The phase 2 will be the section 278 works. We're sighted on the extent of the works. We think the programme length will be approximately 8 weeks, and our understanding and discussions thus far, it's likely going to need temporary traffic signals to be in situ 24/7. However, the section 278 agreement itself is not yet signed, and so we've not been able to actively have the road space discussions to agree the dates. So we'll remain engaged with the developer and colleagues in transport development planning, and as and when that 278 agreement is nearing signature, we will have more detailed discussions about when best for those works to take place. Moving around to the sort of 4 o'clock slot on the map there, this is the A31 Farnham bypass. This is the Brightwells development and the removal of the bridge. First section of that already took place successfully over March, and this is lane closures, and the next batch is 16th to 17th of April. But they're off-peak, and I think they worked reasonably successfully for the first phase. I've no reason to think they won't for the later phases. Further around the map, the Menin Way junction of Tilford Road. This is some Scottish and Southern Energy works. They've been planned for the Easter school holidays when the traffic flows are generally lighter, and that's multi-way temporary signals. Moving further around, this is probably the one that's immediately most problematic and we're focusing on at present, and this is the Calla Homes development at Coxbridge Farm on West Street. The next phase of the development, phases 2 and 3, is power and water connections. So my team are actively engaged with the developer there. We've agreed some measures which have brought down the overall duration of these works from an original 16-week period to now an 11-week period. That's by agreeing extended working hours Monday to Friday and working hours on both Saturdays and Sundays, although the Sunday works will probably be quieter works, but they'll still try and make constructive use of the time on site. This site's going to require 24/7 temporary traffic signals. We've already got agreement that they will be manually controlled to best manage any conflicting traffic queues from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday to Friday. We're in discussions about the need for manual traffic control over the weekends, whether that's a requirement or not, and I'd be interested in any feedback today as to whether people felt that would be advantageous or not. The dates for this have been scheduled to be the 22nd of April through to the 15th of July. Those dates are still ongoing conversations with the project team. Some of my colleagues are meeting with the project team Tuesday next week just to finalise things. But the logic here is that timing syncs with the latter end of phase 3 of the Farnham project and parts of phase 4. We believe that's the least impactful time for these works to take place whilst the project is delivered in the town centre. For all these works I've mentioned here, and all the dates and all the arrangements that are made, we will have streetworks officers from our team specifically visiting site to ascertain whether the measures agreed are being deployed properly and reviewing the impact, and if necessary, we'll make recommendations and changes if we feel there's something that could be done differently to help minimise the overall impact of those activities. And then finally on the map, the top left, the sort of 10, 11 o'clock slot, this is a relatively new piece of information we've received from Southern Gas Networks. Many of you will be familiar that they are conducting a gas mains replacement programme. They have been doing so for many years. This is decommissioning the old cast iron mains that have reached the end of their useful life and replacing them with the yellow plastic mains you see. They've got a number of streets that they want to replace the mains in, most noticeably Folly Hill, Castle Street, Firgrove Hill, Beavers Road, Hale Road and Red Lion Lane. Southern Gas Networks have wanted to get on with these works immediately. We have, of course, said to them that they can't just come in and blanket complete those works with the project in progress. So our discussions with them remain ongoing. We're asking them to defer their gas mains replacement works until the completion of the town centre project delivery. However, we are gathering more details from them in order to determine whether there's any benefit and logic in incorporating any of their works into the town centre scheme itself. Obviously, what we don't want to do is have a road newly resurfaced as part of the town centre project and then find that shortly after Southern Gas Networks want to come in and dig it up and lay a main down it. So those conversations are ongoing and will be in consultation with the project team, and we'll determine any advantages of bringing forward those SGN works. Otherwise, they will be deferred until the completion of the project. Just going back to the West Street works, some of you will be familiar with the lane rental scheme we operate. So Surrey were the first highway authority in England to operate a lane rental scheme since the original two pioneer schemes, which started some 10 years ago. The Department for Transport recently granted all authorities new powers, and we were the first to take up that offer. And the busiest 7% of our road network, we now apply charges for occupation of the highway if our busiest streets are impacted at the busiest times. So despite the duration of the Cala Homes connections coming down, we are still applying charges because they are going to have those temporary traffic signals out on the network at peak times. And if they achieve the programme that we've currently got estimated, we'll be charging them £88,500 for the works that they're going to complete on West Street. I hope you'll all agree that that's sufficient figure to hopefully focus their mind on completing those works as swiftly as possible. And again, as that job progresses, we'll keep a very close eye on progress as to whether we're happy that they're achieving their programme dates and whether there are any further measures that we can instigate to mitigate the impact of those works. So that's a summary of the relatively large scale stuff we're currently aware of. It's my anticipation to come to this board in future. If I can't come, I will make sure a member of my team are here rather than providing a written update so that we can update all stakeholders and take away any concerns or questions as necessary. I'm happy to take any questions now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Matt. I'd really like to thank you first for following up with the discussion we had about working with Hampshire, because I know they also have very significant works going on in Aldershot. So I'm extremely glad that that conversation has now taken place, and really, really thank you for that. In terms of the M3 closure that's coming up, one of the things that we had previously requested was that they put signage up on the M3 roundabout. I know that we're still trying to get them to put permanent signage up there, which I believe still hasn't been done. But if we could at least get temporary signage to say no HGVs down the A287, that would really help, because that is where they go. Every time the M3 closes, the Upper Hell Road is just a disaster. And, you know, particularly when it gets to the bottom and these massive HGVs are trying to turn right down through the narrow section between the listed buildings on Hale Road, it's not good. So if you could ask them to do that, that would be great. I think in terms of other concerns I have, I think I will hand over to the rest of the group to see if there are questions and then come back. So does anybody else? Andy, do you want to raise something?
Thanks, Catherine. First of all, Matt, I think that's a very helpful update, and Matt, you've given us. Will that be circulated to all the board members? In fact, it'd be very helpful if it was.
Yeah, happy to do that. Yeah.
That would be very, very useful. Second, sort of smaller point, really, but it's still an important point. Part of the planning permission that Crest Nicholson were given when the idea of the temporary construction access bridge came along, they had to cut down a whole swathe of trees along the A31, and the planning permission requires them to actually replace these trees, in fact, and that never gets mentioned in terms of the work they're doing. And I'm, as a Waverley councillor, I'm certainly going to bring it up within Waverley, that we must ensure that Crest Nicholson plan to do that. So there may be another future road closure required to do that, and just to make you aware of that, because it's absolutely essential that that is actually done.
That's useful, Andy. Thank you. I mean, that may be my fault. It may be that work is already part of the phases here, and I've just not relayed that in the right level of detail. But let me double check on that. I'll find out if we're having those conversations, and if it's not part of the current.
Planned, that's great. If it isn't planned, we have to make sure it is.
Yeah, quite. Thank you, Andy.
Matt.
I'll check whether that's already part of the conversations, and if it isn't, we'll obviously ensure that as and when they come back to do that replanting, we factor in the timings in the same way as we have the current phases.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Andy. Michaela?
Thank you, Matt. Yes, to the Cox Bridge, the manual operation at the weekends, please, especially when we have events in Farnham. I think it would be an excellent idea. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that feedback. And thoughts on the time frame that we'd benefit from that being applied?
I can see Ian Lynch has got his hand up, so maybe Ian wants to come in on that. And if it's not that, is it that, Ian? No, it's not that. Okay. I think, Matt, perhaps if we can agree that we work with Farnham Town Council regarding what events are on during that time frame and come back to you about weekend manual operation. I think the slight concern we have, we agree manual operation is better than leaving it unmanned. The problem we do find is that quite often when it's manual operation, the guy's sat in his car not actually paying attention to what's going on, which I know you can't actually legislate against, but if there is anything you can do to encourage them to be visibly manually operating and paying attention, I don't know what the right word is, but you know the issue I'm raising, Matt. I don't know what we can do.
I know the issue you're raising very well, Catherine. I'll make sure I send my largest, most intimidating streetworks officer to do the check on the first day. All joking aside, yeah, we know the problem that you refer to. We often have to highlight to the officers on the ground who are left to do the manual operation some of the tools available to them, particularly when sight lines don't necessarily allow them to see round corners. And we highlight to them that even a simple tool like Google Maps on your phone can show you traffic layers and delays. And so we encourage them to utilize that kind of technology to the best endeavors. And yes, I mean, signals can be successfully manually operated whilst sitting in a car. I'm not sure you can do it whilst you're also reading a paper at the same time, but I know the problem you're referring to, and we are familiar with having to resolve that. Hence the earlier point about we will check these sites. We won't just put a request on the permit and then not monitor that it's being fulfilled. With regards to the signal timing at the weekends, then appreciating that events might change things, I am a great believer in trying to keep things as simple as possible. So I would rather we gave them a kind of fixed time that we put forward as our requirement, recognizing there might be the exception to that, but I don't want to create too complicated a sort of matrix of different timings across different weekends, because I think that will just cause confusion. So
I agree, Matt. I think that the suggestion that's coming, being signalled to me with hand signals is 10 till 4. So we'll use that as a starting point. That is what you said, isn't it? Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll relay that back to the contractor and the conversations we're having. This obviously comes at a cost to the contractor, and this is where the lane rental charges are helpful, because it may be that we levy a part of the lane rental charge to enable them to afford that additional traffic measure. So that's where some of the leverage we have with that hefty penalty from lane rental comes into play. So that's fine. I'll make some further engagement sessions with the contractor, and we'll take that forward.
Matt, Ian.
Thanks. First of all, Matt, thanks for the overview. It's really helpful. Secondly, we will get Ollie Klusky to have a quick word with you on the events over that period of time, just in case there's anything that might be additionally helpful. The third point I was going to ask was about the lane rental charge and the income that you receive. When Thames Water blocked West Street for a very long time, they contributed some money towards promoting the business community during that period, and we ran a competition which was very well received. And I don't know whether the legislation allows you to passport some of that money towards a similar project during this period, because I think that could be beneficial for both the county and for Carla Holmes in terms of a joint project to support the business community, and it fits with things that were said earlier on, I think, by our MP. So I wonder if we can take that offline.
Yeah, thanks, Ian. I mean, just to give people some insight, so the principle of the lane rental scheme, and this is across all of Surrey, not unique to Farnham, is that we levy the charges. Obviously, we seek to avoid people paying the charges. That's when the scheme is most successful, because if they're not paying the charges, they have found a way to not be affecting traffic flows at peak times. So the ideal is nobody pays anything. That's the aim of the scheme. But when we do receive income, as we will in this instance, at the end of the year, we remove our operating costs for the scheme, and that net surplus is ring-fenced, and legislation requires it to be granted to projects which, and the sort of tagline is, reduce the negative impact of roadworks and streetworks. There is a governance board that sits and considers any bids that come in, and if it's felt the bid meets that criteria, that something being proposed mitigates the negative impact of streetworks and roadworks, then the board will consider whether it's a valid bid and may or may not allocate monies. So I'm not trying to be deliberately elusive, but it really depends what the bid that comes forward says, and crucially how you sort of hang it off that tagline. So monies coming to an affected community by works, however you want to define that community, you might be able to argue is something that mitigates the impact of streetworks and roadworks. It's not something that we've had come to the board yet, bid-wise, but that's not to say it's completely outside of scope.
Matt,
So
Matt,
more than happy
sorry,
to. Sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. I'm just slightly conscious of time. We've only got 12 minutes left of the meeting.
Sorry.
And I think the point's been raised. If it's possible, can we take this outside of the meeting? Owen, if your point is on the same issue, can I suggest we take it outside of the meeting, please, so we can move on?
Yeah, no problem.
Thanks, Erin. Hannah, could you bring the slides back up, and perhaps we could say thank you very much to Matt and move on to the A31?
Thank you.
So as I've only got 12 minutes left now, 1 minute less, since we submitted the business case back in November 2021, as I've said previously, things have changed, priorities have changed for government, etc. So at the moment, we need to assess the most cost-effective and beneficial scheme for Farnham again. So as you know, which I said before in previous boards, the outcome of this review will give a new direction on the design potentially, and help us to understand the benefits of delivering the scheme as a whole versus separate sections. So we need to identify kind of key steps in order for us to move to the next stage, which is the outline business case, which in essence is the preliminary design and consultation. So we're talking with the DFT a lot, and in the background, just so you kind of, I have been given a big speech about modelling. So in a nutshell, the modelling is ongoing. It's having tuber assessments and different scenarios tested, etc. And then after that modelling, as you know, they will have a kind of an outcome of how it impacts that particular junction, and how the different options we need to build on to make it kind of work. So the current estimate of submission of the outline business case is August 26th. So before that, you will be consulted. So that's the kind of timeline. So it is a big scheme. We've obviously got the Farnham Town Centre scheme going on in the background. So just to give you kind of a heads up, we are still working on it.
Thank you, Elaine. And just to reassure everyone, in terms of the thing that's really beneficial to Farnham is the north-south connectivity, and I just would like you to confirm that that is still being considered.
Yeah, and especially active travel in that as well.
Go for it, Greg.
So just so I'm clear, is the money secure from Department of Transport?
So the strategic outline business case is a finger in the sand to say we will bid, and they say, yeah, that's an appropriate scheme to bid on, And then the outline business case has to have a benefit cost ratio which is appropriate and acceptable to the DFT. And then we put it forward as an outline business case, which all of Farnham agree, and we're all happy and we're moving it forward. It's essentially saying they like the scheme and it's a good idea, but we've still got to bid. So they've earmarked the money.
But your continual raising of this issue with the DFT would be greatly appreciated as the importance of the scheme. Thank you. Right, if we can move on to the next slide, please, Hannah. Thank you.
I thought I'd highlight this in green because it always does show how much we've done as a team. So, you know, we've been rattling through all the different bits of the OIP, which bits we've brought forward, you know, rerouting of the HGVs, reclassification of the A259, the A31 speed management scheme, wayfinding, the 320-mile-an-hour schemes. Sorry? Painting the rail bridge as well, which Tim did help with, you know, with a Network Rail chief exec. Water Lane has recently been completed. As Hannah said in previous slides, Borelli Walk is coming to completing. Sorry, Riverside Way. I get them mixed up. Borelli's coming next. And Orly's been working on the town centre improvement scheme. The LC WIP is slightly delayed just due to getting funding available and the feasibility, and staffing, as Catherine said. So, yeah, it just shows how much we actually have done on that slide. So probably, next slide.
So I just wanted one more thing on that slide. So just the North and South Farnham studies, obviously those that are going to suffer from any traffic displacement are still keen to make sure that that stays on the table and that work is done, and we will obviously continue to remind you of the importance of that. Yeah, if you'd like to move on to the next slide, which I believe is a question from Peter Goodman. So you have the question and you're going to provide a response.
So a response has gone over. I'm quite happy to read it out if that helps. So it's quite a long one, so bear with me. Bring my mic closer. So in essence, Peter's sitting there. It was about the widths of the road and questions surrounding it as part of cycling provision. So the response is, while dedicated cycle lanes would be preferred, it's rarely possible to do so in a historic town centre like Farnham, which has a tight street pattern and a high pedestrian footfall. Footway widths on Downing Street are currently substandard, and footway widening was identified as a priority during consultation and design development with the Farnham Board. The widened footway also accommodates loading bays, which are a critical element to avoid congestion behind delivery vehicles stopped at the curb. And this also is aligned with Surrey's Local Transport Plan 4, which puts pedestrians at the top of the hierarchy, as you know, followed by cycling. However, where separation cannot be provided, good practice guidance from the DFT, LTM 120 and Active Travel England recommends avoiding lane widths between 3.2 metres and 3.9 as it encourages filtering without a safe space to do so. The better and more importantly, safer option for cyclists is to create narrower and consistent lanes of 3.2 or lower. This means cyclists will cycle with traffic when travelling through Farnham Town Centre, where the maximum speed, which has obviously been implemented, is 20 miles an hour. There will be traffic calming measures, such as raised tables, to further slow the traffic once the scheme is complete and provide safe crossing points for pedestrians. Advanced stop lines will be, however, provided for cyclists who will be at the front when the traffic light turns red to increase their visibility. And we are also providing more cycle stands in the town centre to support cyclists, along with the Riverside and Borelli cycle scheme and LC WIPs coming forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. I think that's understood by all of us. Thank you very much for the explanation. Can you move to the next slide, please, which I believe is AOB? Okay. So in terms of AOB, does anybody else have any items of AOB they would like to raise? Okay. So in terms of future meetings, I think that there are two categories of discussion that we need to have, and Ben touched on it earlier when we were talking about comms. I think there's obviously meetings we need to have about the ongoing works, the operational works, and then there's obviously, you know, discussions we need to continue to have about the A31, the North and South Farnham studies, and the Recklesham and Western bypasses. And I know that we're all keen to make sure that, you know, the platforms are appropriate, that we include all the right people. Obviously, the bid team are an important partner in all of this. As Tim can't be here today, he has asked that we have a meeting in the next couple of weeks to agree the format of meetings going forward, who's involved, how we deal with the operational ongoing issues, and how we deal with the future work. So if that's okay with you, if we could put an action on myself and Tim to organise that meeting, and then we can move forward. We don't currently have a date in the diary for the next Farnham board meeting. I know there's been a lot of discussion in this meeting about the value of this discussion, and I certainly know that local councillors definitely value these meetings, as I think does Greg. So we will just need to think about what format we take going forward, and what we deal with in more operational meetings, and what we deal with in these sorts of open forums. So if that's okay, we will do that. Does anybody else have anything else they would like to add before we wrap up the meeting? Having thought we were going to run out of time, we've now got 3 minutes left, although that is essentially running out of time. Okay, in that case, I'd like to thank everyone for their patience and for supporting me to chair the meeting, and we will look forward to welcoming Tim back. So thank you very much, everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.